Imagine you are in a huge apartment building and it's on fire.
Well, let's get back out to that breaking news in Miami where there is a fire. Multiple people have been rescued.
The smoke you can see coming out of this building.
And you don't know that. You don't see any signs of fire. You live on the 20th floor. You walk out of your apartment and are heading to the elevator, and one of your neighbors tells you that the building is on fire. Your first reaction is to pull the fire alarm, but you aren't so sure that your neighbor might be trying to get you to set off a false alarm. After all, you've never seen this particular neighbor before. Is he even your neighbor? Maybe he just is someone who happened to be on your floor when you came out of your apartment. He isn't pulling the fire alarm. He isn't banging on doors. Maybe this is a hoax. I've used this analogy before, but today I'm expanding on it into an entire video. Let's have a chat. Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me, and especially to my patrons and channel members. I need to give credit for the idea for this analogy to a viewer. It was a comment to a video a few months ago, but I'm sorry, I don't remember which person it was. But I have taken this viewer's idea and run with it to come up with far more biblical ideas to insert. This is an analogy, and there are points that don't fit exactly, but I think it makes the point. So you are in the building that your neighbor says is on fire.
She's living in a world and it's on fire.
But you aren't sure if the fire is real. So you ask the neighbor, let's call him Bob, how he knows there is a fire. He says Sally told him. Okay, how does Sally know that there's a fire? Sally found a note on the table in the common area on the first floor. And she read the note? Well, not exactly. See, the note was written in Belarusian. I see. Does anyone in the building speak Belarusian? Yes, Jerry and Maya do. Sally took the note to Maya, and she said that it said that the building was on fire. Okay, then, let's pull the fire alarm. Wait, says Mike. I saw the note too, and I showed it to Jerry, and he says that it says the building could burn. He says that Maya mistranslated the note. Oh, well, now I'm not sure again. I go to the first floor to check out the note. I use the stairs just in case the building really is on fire, despite the fact that I can see the elevators are in use and they seem to be working just fine. When I get to the first floor, there's a large crowd of people all arguing.
Oh, come on. What? Because I have a little conversation with somebody?
The note is on the table. I look at it. It's a photocopy of a handwritten note. It isn't even the original. Where is the original? No one knows. Ron says he found it like this and doesn't know if the original was ever here or not. There is no original to be found anywhere. If there really was a fire and people really were in danger, why would anyone leave a copy of a note on the table and leave? Worse, a copy of a note only two people in the building can even read, even if they can't agree on what it means. Certainly not anyone that cares about the welfare of the people in the building, if the building really is on fire. Who wrote the note? I can't tell. It's not signed, and the text doesn't say who the author was. Great. So we have a note from who knows who, claiming there is a danger we cannot see. Does this person expect us to take this note seriously? He, she, or they certainly don't act like they want to be taken seriously. Did the author mean this building? How do we know? Did the author make hundreds of these and put them in buildings all over town? Who knows? The people in the common area are all arguing about the note. Some say that Maya translated it correctly, but interpreted the translation incorrectly. Others say there was a fire, but it was put out. Still others say that there are 17 O's in the letter, which means that the fire is on the 34th floor, because there are two O's in the word floor, so you double that number to know what floor the fire is on. The letter is 4 lines long, so the fire will burn for 4 days before it becomes fatal. So there are 4 days to get everyone out. Wait. The note isn't in English. Why would the number of letters have anything to do with the English spelling of the word floor? Yes, some people are going a bit nuts with coming up with how to interpret this letter. Wait a minute. When was the note put here? If it was 4 days ago, we need to get out now. But if it was 5 days ago, then the letter's a fake and we don't need to worry about it. Some people are praying about it. They are quietly asking their God if he had anything to do with this note and should they heed its words. Others are praying loudly in tongues and are contributing to a lot of the confusion. Maybe we should just call the fire department and let them check out the building? So we do. The fire department comes, they clear everyone out and check the building floor by floor. They find a wastebasket on the 32nd floor with some smoldering embers. They put out the embers. They investigate the letter and find the guy that wrote it. And guess what? He's the one that set the fire. I think you can see where much of this is going, and that there are some flaws in the analogy. First, that we didn't call the fire department right off the bat. Second, that there actually was a fire, as I don't believe there really is one. Fires spread quickly and are life-threatening. The idea of a fire that will take 4 days to engulf a building is ridiculous. But it's no more ridiculous than the idea of a person knowing a building is on fire and instead of warning all the residents or calling the fire department or pulling the fire alarm, he writes a note and leaves it on the table on his way out the door. Worse, he doesn't even leave you the original of the note. He leaves you no way of knowing who wrote the note, and the note is in a language that most people in the building don't speak. Now, the Gospels were originally written in Greek, in a time when Greek was commonly spoken in the Roman Empire. However, the claim is made by believers that this note is supposed to be intended not just for the people of the first century, but for all people of all time. The form of Greek in the manuscripts is Koine Greek, a dead language. No one speaks Koine Greek today as a native tongue. If the Bible is supposed to be a book for all people of all time, why not write it so everyone could understand it? How could God do that? Simple. Don't confuse the languages at the Tower of Babel, and then you have everyone speaking the same language. But even that wouldn't work now, would it? When we take ourselves out of the storybook world of the Bible and come back to reality, we know that languages evolve. Words change meaning over time, and people that are separated by great distances end up speaking different languages over time as word meanings evolve. But if there really were an all-powerful God that wanted everyone to understand him, he could simply make all of us with an ingrained knowledge of one language that he used to write his book. Another possibility is to make a magical book that whoever reads it will see it in his, her, or their native tongue. To me, this would be the best possible evidence of a divine being, as no human could ever create such a book. Getting back to the analogy, once you get past the language problem, you then have the interpretation problem. There are literally thousands of interpretations of the Bible. Some disagreements are minor, but others are not. The only thing all Christians, and I realize Christians aren't the only ones that use the Bible, but they are the ones that I've chosen to focus on as I know the Christian doctrine better. They all have one thing in common, and that is Jesus. And they don't even agree on who Jesus is. Was he fully human and set aside his divinity? Or was he both fully human and fully divine simultaneously? It depends on the believer that you're talking to. Does it matter? I should think so. If you can't answer the question of who is your God beyond a name, then you don't have a theology. You can see why I have a problem with the claims that one has a personal relationship with Jesus. How do you have a personal relationship with someone you've never met? Someone whose personal message to you is one you can't even read? One whose only way of talking to you is going to a bookstore and buying a book that wasn't written for you? Or at least that was the case when I first became a believer. Now you can get a copy of the book online for free. And just for fun, here's John 3:16 in Belarusian. I can translate that into any language using Google Translate, and then here it is after I put it through several translations and back to English. Kind of lost a lot of the meaning there, didn't it? Next question. What do you call a person who knows a building is on fire, but instead of warning the occupants, he leaves a note on the table and leaves? I call him a coward. You certainly can't say this guy loves the occupants of the building. If he did, he would have done more than just this. I added something new. The guy that wrote the note also set the fire. I know most believers would push back on that and say, God doesn't send people to hell, people send themselves. But I didn't say the guy that wrote sent them to the fire. I said he made the fire. According to the Bible, God made hell. He supposedly didn't make it for man. He made it for the devil and his angels. But this raises a lot of questions. Why make the devil and his angels if they're going to mess up his creation? Do angels feel pain? They don't have physical bodies, so I don't see how they can. And if they don't, is hell really a bad place for them, or just a different place? Some people depict hell as a place where demons gleefully torment humans. And if that's the case, hell seems to be a happy place for the fallen angels, in which case it isn't a judgment to send them there, which actually makes God even more immoral. He punishes the humans that get fooled into not worshiping him, but rewards the devil and his angels for their knowing rebellion. Assuming that hell is not an enjoyable place for demons, we are still left wondering why a good God would make it. Why not rehabilitate the fallen humans and demons? Send them to a place of education. If the whole problem is they don't think the correct thoughts about God, then correct their thinking. Torturing them certainly isn't going to fix the problem, but tutoring them might just do that.
I find your God's lack of problem-solving skills disturbing.
Nor does it bring justice. When someone commits a murder and is put to death, the murder victim is still dead. The family is still grieving. Nothing is made right. They just got a bit of vengeance. We call this justice because it's the best we can do. But if we were omnipotent judges that could set things right, what we would do would be bring back the murder victim. Since God allegedly has the power to do all things, why not actually make things right? Restore life to the dead. Restore possessions to those who have lost possessions. Restore love to those who have lost relationships. This is what I would expect of a just and loving God, that he would actually fix the problems, not that he would kill anyone who didn't think the way he wanted them to think. The Christian God is so lacking in problem solving skills and communication skills, I don't see how anyone could consider him to be omniscient or omnipotent. Some would respond that the murder victim is alive in heaven, so God did make things right. Or does he? What if the victim didn't know God? Then the victim is in hell. The Christian would then respond that if the victim didn't know God, they were suppressing the truth in unrighteousness because they knew God as his invisible qualities are clearly seen. So the victim is rightfully in her place in hell. Okay, but if she saw these invisible qualities and believed that there was a God that made her, would that save her? No, she doesn't know Jesus. She didn't confess with her mouth that Jesus is Lord or believe in her heart that he was raised from the dead, as she didn't know these things. I don't know these things. Sure, I've heard it. I've heard it thousands of times. But what I have heard varies from person to person, and the message itself is self contradictory. Once saved, always saved? You can make a case for that from the Bible. You can lose your salvation? You can make a case for that from the Bible. God chooses the elect to be saved? Humans choose to be saved? No matter which view of God you pick, you can find verses to support it because the message is not clear. Worse, the message is inconsistent with reality. Just like my fire burning for 4 days before it will become fatal, much of what is in the Bible simply isn't possible. A worldwide flood isn't possible. The sun stopping in the sky isn't possible. Worse, it's not just that it isn't possible, but that we know these things didn't happen. Massive floods leave evidence in geology. It's why the Geologic Survey can tell us about a huge flood 7,500 years ago that likely is the basis for the flood myths of the ancient Middle East. But the evidence is not for a global flood. History shows that there was no global flood. If there were, we should see archaeological evidence of all of humanity being wiped out and civilization starting over 100 to several hundred years later as the people from the Tower of Babel disperse. But that isn't what we find. Rather, there is clear evidence of human habitation all over this planet at a time when there should not be if there were a global flood. Additionally, the entire planet was repopulated by migrating Babylonians from Babel. We should see evidence of this. Babylonian pottery and art should be in the new civilization layers all over the globe. It isn't there. Rather, we see evidence of continuous civilizations that don't notice this alleged flood that was supposed to have wiped them out. Why is this important? So what if the flood never happened? Many Christians accept that there was no global flood, and the story is about a large local flood that seemed global to the writers. Theological problems. First, the Bible claims that everything in whose nostrils was the breath of life among all that was on dry land died. Well, what it means is that everything in the nearby area died. Okay, but again, you need to alter the text to make it fit reality. Further, why take the birds on the boat? If the flood wasn't global, as the text claims, the birds can just fly away. There's no need to take them. Yes, the writer wouldn't know that, but an omniscient God should. If God knows the flood isn't really global, why command Noah to take the birds? The story clearly intends that the flood was global. If the story were inspired by an omniscient God, either this God is a poor communicator or he inspired the writer to write falsehood. For the writer, it isn't a lie. He didn't know that the flood was only local. But for God, it is a lie. God should have known better. Next is the problem with the evolution of man. Genetics proves an out of Africa model for human migration. There is no bottleneck in the Middle East for migration from the Tower of Babel. Further, there is no special creation from a single progenitor pair from which all humans descend. Many Christians accept this and say Adam and Eve were created alongside the evolved humans. Swamidas proposes a specially created pair that are the most recent common ancestors of all humans. Some solve the problem by accepting Adam and Eve not as literal people, but figurative. But the Bible draws Jesus' lineage to Adam and Eve. If they are figurative, how can a real human descend from figurative people? If they are figurative, could Jesus also be figurative? The Bible claims that through one man, Adam, sin entered the world. The fall is supposed to be the story of how man came to be a sinful being. If Adam is a real person living alongside of others, but is just the first one to sin, then you have millions of people that are sinless. The Bible verses that say that no one is without sin and that all like sheep have gone astray are wrong. Clearly, millions of people have lived sinless lives. Next, if Adam sinned and by that acquired a sin nature, the other people that lived alongside him would not have this nature. Even after the fall, there would still be sinless people around. Even if their lineages all eventually die out, that would take hundreds of years. Further, they live all over the globe. If a literal Adam lived about 6,000 years ago, he can't possibly be the Y chromosome ancestor of all humanity, as the most recent Y chromosome common ancestor lived about 236,000 years ago in Africa. Maybe there were lots of generations of people the Bible skipped in the lineage. Possible. But that renders these verses wrong that count the number of generations. No matter how you try to justify it, you end up rendering at least one passage of the Bible to be wrong. My conclusion is that the Bible cannot be infallible or inerrant. There is little difference, if any, between the Bible and other books of its genre. It is far more reasonable to conclude that this is a book written by people about their experiences and thoughts about their God than it is to conclude that this is the book of an omniscient God that loves you and wants you to believe something in particular about that God from reading it or hearing it. There is no reason to think any of the supernatural claims are true, because even the mundane claims turn out to be false. Thus, there is no fire. Just live your life. Here are fresh hot chocolate chip granny cookies for those who gave super thanks in last week's video. Data Jack and Jenny loves Will Riker. Thank you. Live your life.